Welcome to the Aleph-Bet Moment. I'm Greg Witter with Ephraim's Cry and the Hebraic Mindset Study Series. This is more than a study of ancient Hebrew letters. It is a journey back to the language, culture, and covenant foundation through which much of Scripture was revealed. Together, we'll explore the Hebrew Aleph-Bet, the Paleo-Hebrew pictographs, and the biblical themes woven throughout the word of Elohim from Bereshit to Revelation, not to create doctrine, but to better understand the doctrine that is already established by Scripture. Ancient letters, eternal truth, covenant understanding. Let's begin today's Aleph-Bet Moment. Today we begin our journey through the Hebrew Aleph-Bet with the very first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Aleph, the letter of strength, the letter of leadership, the letter of authority, the letter of first things. As we move through this series together, we're going to discover that these letters are far more than symbols used to create words. They are part of the language through which Yahuah chose to reveal his word, preserve his covenant, and communicate his truth. Now let's establish something from the beginning. Scripture establishes doctrine. The Hebrew language helps us understand. The Paleo-Hebrew pictographs help us to visualize. But the letters never create doctrine. They simply illuminate what Scripture already reveals. Today we begin with Aleph, the first, the source, the beginning. So let's begin. Every structure begins with a foundation. Every kingdom begins with a king. Every covenant begins with a covenant giver. And the Hebrew Aleph-Bet begins with Aleph. Aleph is the first letter and the head of the Hebrew Aleph-Bet or alphabet. It establishes themes that will echo throughout the entire Aleph-Bet. Strength, leadership, authority, source, beginning, order. Throughout Scripture, first things matter. We have the law of first mention, the first commandment, the first fruits, the firstborn. The principle of first things appears repeatedly because first things establish the order. Genesis opens with the words, "In the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth." Before creation existed, Yahuah existed. Before mankind existed, Yahuah existed. Before nations existed, Yahuah existed. Aleph reminds us that everything begins with him. Everything proceeds from him. Everything is sustained by him, and everything ultimately returns to him. Now let's look at the ancient picture behind Aleph. The original Paleo-Hebrew Aleph was drawn as the head of an ox. To the ancient Hebrew, this immediately communicated something important. The ox was one of the strongest and most valuable animals in their community. Entire families depended on its labor. Fields were plowed through its strength. Harvests were gathered because of its work. Provision flowed because it faithfully carried burdens. The ox was not merely strong, it was useful. It worked, it served, it endured, it carried responsibility. Notice something important here. The ancient Hebrew did not associate leadership primarily with position. He associated leadership with responsibility. The one who led carried the greatest burden. The one who led served. The one who led sacrificed. The world defines leadership as power. The kingdom defines leadership as responsibility. The world says leadership means being served. The kingdom says leadership means serving. Suddenly, the ox becomes more than an animal. It becomes a picture of covenant leadership. Strength under authority, power under control, leadership through service. The Aleph establishes a simple but profound truth. Everything begins with Yahuah. He is the source. He is the authority. He is the beginning. He is the foundation. Every biblical story ultimately begins here. When mankind rejects Yahuah's authority, disorder follows. When mankind submits to Yahuah's authority, blessings follow. Aleph teaches us that authority is not a burden. Authority is protection. Authority is order. Authority is blessing. Authority is life. Every life is built around whatever occupies first place. Everyone has something they place first. For some, it is Yahuah. For others, it is comfort, success, money, tradition, religion, self. Whatever occupies first place eventually determines everything else. It shapes priorities. It shapes decisions. It shapes beliefs. It shapes behavior. Aleph forces us to ask a question. Who sits on the throne? Who determines truth? Who governs my life? Because whatever stands first becomes our source. Aleph calls us back to placing Yahuah first. Covenant cannot exist without authority. Before there can be obedience, there must be instruction. Before there can be instruction, there must be a lawgiver. Before there can be a covenant people, there must be a covenant giver. Aleph reminds us that covenant begins by recognizing Yahuah as king and as creator. Adam received instruction. Noah received instruction. Abraham received instruction. Israel received instruction. The disciples received instruction. Covenant always begins with recognizing who has the right to speak, who has the right to command, who has the right to give instruction, who has the right to define truth. The kingdom begins with a king. Many people want the blessing of the kingdom without submitting to the authority of the king. But the kingdom does not function that way. Aleph teaches us that kingdom living begins with surrender. Not surrender to religion, not surrender to tradition, surrender to Yahuah, his authority, his instruction, his ways, his truth. Aleph points us directly towards Yahusha. He declares himself the Aleph and the Tav, the beginning and the end, the first and the last, the source and the fulfillment. The themes of Aleph authority, leadership, strength, and source find their fulfillment in him. He leads his people. He guides his flock. He carries responsibility for redemption. He demonstrates what righteous leadership looks like. Not domination, service. Not self-exaltation, sacrifice. The four witnesses continually reinforce the theme of Aleph. The Torah reveals Yahuah as creator and lawgiver. The prophets reveal him as king and judge. The writings reveal him as the shepherd and deliverer. The apostolic scriptures reveal Yahushua as the Messiah and the Redeemer and the kinsman Redeemer. From Genesis to Revelation, we repeatedly see Aleph themes: authority, leadership, source, beginning, strength, order. Again and again, Scripture confirms the message of Aleph. One of the greatest dangers in every generation is misplaced priorities. People often place something where only Yahuah belongs. Tradition becomes first. Religion becomes first. Politics become first. Comfort becomes first. Self becomes first. Whenever something replaces Yahuah in first place, confusion always follows. Compromise follows. Weakness follows. Aleph confronts that deception immediately. Who is first? What is first? Who determines truth in your life? Hey, before we go any further, let me invite you into and be part of the investigation here. Every Hebrew letter gives us something to examine: its form, its function, its words, its spiritual witnesses, and its covenant message. Aleph begins the journey by pointing us towards strength, leadership, authority, and the one who stands first. So subscribe and walk with us from Aleph to Tav as we investigate the letters one witness at a time. Now, back to the investigation. Now let's look at the letter itself. The Paleo-Hebrew Aleph is the ox head. The name is Aleph. Its sound is the silent carrier of a vowel. Its numerical value is 1. Its meaning is strength, leadership, authority, first, function, to lead, to begin, to establish direction, to represent origin. Everything about Aleph reinforces the same covenant message. Notice several important Hebrew words begin with Aleph. Ab, father. The father serves as the leader, protector, provider, and instructor. Adam, man. Humanity created in the image of Elohim. Echad, one. Unity, oneness, a central concept throughout Scripture. Elohim, creator, the one introduced in Genesis 1:1. Notice the common thread: authority, source, leadership, origin. Aleph is woven into every one of them. Aleph carries the numerical value of 1. Throughout Scripture, 1 represents unity, beginning, source, headship, origin. There is one creator, one covenant giver, one Messiah, one kingdom, one ultimate authority. The number 1 continually points us back to Yahuah. Aleph teaches that everything begins with Yahuah. Strength flows from him. Authority originates with him. Leadership is modeled by him. Order is established by him. The further we move from him, the more confusion increases. The closer we move towards him, the more clarity we find. The first word of Scripture begins with Bet, not Aleph. However, one of the earliest and most important Aleph words is Elohim. In the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. The opening chapter immediately introduces us to the ultimate expression of Aleph, the Creator himself, the source, the authority, the beginning. Put Yahuah first. Walk in his authority. Build upon his word. Lead with humility. Serve with faithfulness. The kingdom application of Aleph is simple. What is first determines everything else. Aleph points us towards Yahusha, the good shepherd, the appointed king, the one given authority by the Father, the one who leads his people. The theme of leadership and authority associated with Aleph find their fulfillment in the Messiah. How do we know if Yahuah is first? Look at your priorities. Look at your schedule. Look at your conversations. Look at your decisions. Look at your comments and commitments. Whatever consistently receives your attention and obedience occupies first place. Aleph challenges us to examine ourselves honestly. Who leads us? Whose voice do we follow? Whose authority do we recognize? Before obedience comes authority. Before covenant comes surrender. Aleph reminds us that Yahuah must be first. Strength, leadership, authority, first, source. These are the 5 pillars of Aleph. Together, they establish the foundation upon which the rest of the Aleph-Bet is built. Every letter that follows builds upon what Aleph establishes. The Aleph-Bet begins with strength. It begins with leadership. It begins with authority. The ancient ox reminds us that true leadership is not merely power. It's responsibility. It's service. It is carrying the burden and leading the way. Aleph stands first because covenant begins with recognizing the one who stands first above all things. The journey through the Hebrew Aleph-Bet begins with Aleph, the letter of strength, the letter of leadership, the letter of authority, the letter of first things. Before we can understand the rest of the Aleph-Bet, we must first understand the importance of authority, responsibility, and covenant submission. Aleph reminds us that Yahuah stands first above all things and calls his people to walk under his leadership and instruction. This has been the Aleph-Bet Moment. I'm Greg Witter. Until next time, study, learn, apply, grow, share, and repeat. Thank you for joining me for this Aleph-Bet Moment. I hope this presentation has given you a new appreciation for the beauty, depth, and covenant message woven throughout the Hebrew language. If you'd like to continue your journey and follow along with our study tools, I've created the Aleph-Bet Restoration Bundle. It includes a complete Restoring the Language of Creation study guide, the Paleo-Hebrew Covenant Aleph-Bet chart, expanded letter studies, covenant applications, Hebrew word studies, prophetic themes, and additional teaching resources designed to help you study the scriptures from a Hebraic mindset. Simply scan the QR code or visit ephraimscry.com to learn more. There's also more in the description for this video. My prayer is that these resources encourage you to study more deeply, understand more clearly, continue discovering the remarkable testimony revealed from Aleph to Tav. I'm Greg Witter with Ephraim's Cry and the Hebraic Mindset Study Series. If you're ready to take your study even deeper, Ephraim's Cry has a full online academy designed to train, equip, and strengthen the remnant in these last days. Inside the academy, you'll find in-depth courses, study guides, video training, and step-by-step teachings that take you far beyond where we can cover here on YouTube. If you're serious about understanding Scripture from a Hebraic mindset, if you're committed to becoming a grounded disciple who can stand, speak, and endure, then I want to invite you to join us at Ephraim's Cry Academy and step into the academy. Be part of the work Yahuah is raising up in this last hour. A people trained to go into all the world and proclaim the truth with clarity, conviction, and courage, sharing the true gospel of the kingdom. Remember, stay watchful, stay grounded in Torah. Study, learn, apply, grow, and share. And I'll see you inside the academy for the next teaching. Shalom.